Over the last 24 hours, Donald Trump has once again captured global attention with a series of dramatic developments that span the international stage, domestic policy, and even the volatile arena of political violence. In this extended news update, we will break down Trump's latest demands on NATO, his push for new tariffs against China, the brewing controversy surrounding the possible deployment of National Guard troops to Louisiana, and his reaction to the shocking murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Each of these stories sheds light on Trump's evolving strategy, his enduring influence on policy, and the broader political landscape shaping both America and the world at this pivotal moment. Trump's NATO and Russia. Gambit. Donald Trump has always presented himself as a deal-maker, someone who understands how to apply pressure, leverage negotiations, and force others to shoulder their share of responsibility. In the last 24 hours, he made it clear once again that this philosophy continues to guide his foreign policy. Speaking to reporters, Trump declared that the United States would not move forward with significant new sanctions on Russia unless every single NATO ally agreed to stop buying Russian oil. On the surface, this sounded like a straightforward demand, but in reality it carried massive consequences. For years, Europe has relied heavily on Russian energy, particularly natural gas and oil. Even after the war in Ukraine escalated, several NATO countries continued limited purchases of Russian fuel to prevent their economies from collapsing. Trump's message was blunt: America will not carry the economic burden of punishing Moscow alone, while European nations continue funneling money into Russia's war chest. This stance was vintage Trump, hardline, transactional, and unapologetic. It signaled to NATO partners that they must either align completely with Washington or risk being left exposed. Critics argue that this approach threatens to splinter the alliance at a moment when unity is critical. Yet Trump's supporters see it as a long overdue correction to what they describe as decades of one-sided commitments, where the U.S. foots the bill while allies get a free ride. China in Trump's crosshairs, alongside his push against Russian oil, Trump intensified his rhetoric against China with an even more dramatic proposal. He demanded that NATO countries impose massive tariffs, ranging between 50% and 100% on Chinese imports. His argument was that Beijing, by continuing its trade and financial ties with Moscow, is essentially bankrolling Russia's war effort. This is not an entirely new theme for Trump. During his presidency, he launched a full-scale trade war with China, introducing tariffs that reshaped the global economy. What makes his latest stance different is how he is directly tying China's behavior to European security and the stability of the Western alliance. By framing China as a silent partner in Russia's war, Trump is urging NATO members to extend their economic warfare beyond Moscow and toward Beijing itself. The proposal is undeniably bold, and many experts warn it could trigger an even deeper economic confrontation, one with far-reaching consequences for global markets, supply chains, and everyday consumers. Imagine tariffs doubling the price of electronics, automobiles, and basic goods flowing out of China. Yet for Trump, this risk is part of a bigger picture. The idea that economic weapons should be wielded as leverage to force geopolitical shifts. His approach highlights his belief that financial pressure can be just as decisive as military strength in shaping the future balance of power. National Guard deployment to Louisiana. While Trump's international demands dominate headlines abroad, his domestic policies are also sparking heated debate. The Pentagon has revealed plans, reportedly at Trump's urging, to deploy as many as 1,000 National Guard troops to Louisiana. The stated mission is to assist local law enforcement in cities such as New Orleans and Baton Rouge, where crime rates have remained stubbornly high. Supporters argue that Trump is taking decisive action to restore order in communities plagued by violence. They claim local governments have failed to bring crime under control, and that the presence of National Guard troops would provide immediate relief. For Trump's political base, this move serves as a powerful symbol of law and order leadership. Yet the proposal faces significant criticism. Opponents contend that deploying military personnel into American cities blurs the line between civilian law enforcement and federal control. Some fear this is less about public safety and more about Trump asserting political dominance in Democratic-leaning urban areas. The legal complexities are equally thorny, since governors play a crucial role in overseeing the National Guard. Because the Guard operates under state authority, Federal intervention would almost certainly spark legal and political battles. If carried out, this plan could mark one of the most controversial domestic actions of Trump's return to power. It raises fundamental questions about the militarization of policing and whether such measures address the root causes of crime or merely treat the symptoms. The Charlie Kirk murder case. The most shocking development of the past 24 hours has been the arrest of a suspect in the murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Kirk, best known as the founder of Turning Point USA and a prominent voice in the conservative movement, was killed in Utah in what authorities have described as a targeted attack. Police have taken into custody a 22-year-old suspect identified as Tyler Robinson. While the investigation remains ongoing, Trump wasted no time in responding. He condemned the killing as a heinous assassination, language that underscored how politically charged the incident has already become. Trump framed the murder as part of a broader wave of political violence, warning that America is entering a dangerous era in which public figures and activists are no longer safe. This statement struck a chord with his supporters, many of whom believe they are under attack not only politically, but physically as well. At the same time, the response has fueled debate. Critics accuse Trump of exploiting the tragedy to rally his base, while his allies argue he is simply acknowledging a grim reality. The murder of Kirk has quickly become more than a criminal case. It has turned into a flashpoint in America's culture wars, magnifying the tensions between rhetoric, polarization, and public safety. Trump's strategy in motion. When these stories are taken together, Trump's NATO demands, his call for sweeping tariffs on China, the potential deployment of National Guard troops in Louisiana, and his reaction to the murder of Charlie Kirk, a clear picture of his strategy emerges. Trump is positioning himself as the uncompromising defender of American strength, both internationally and domestically. On the world stage, he is pressing allies to shoulder equal burdens and framing economic warfare as the new front line of geopolitical conflict. At home, he is embracing a hardline vision of law and order while seizing on moments of tragedy to reinforce his narrative of a nation under siege. The result is a political playbook that is unapologetically confrontational and deeply polarizing. To his critics, it threatens alliances, destabilizes markets, and inflames division. To his supporters, it demonstrates resolve, toughness, and an unwillingness to accept half measures. Either way, the past 24 hours illustrate that Trump continues to shape not only the American political conversation, but also the global balance of power. His strategy is in motion, and its impact is reverberating across borders, institutions, and communities alike. On the world stage, Trump is sending a blunt message to America's allies: step up or step aside. At home, he is projecting toughness, even if it means blurring traditional lines between military and civilian authority. This approach is polarizing, but it is undeniably effective in keeping him at the center of every major political debate. Trump thrives on controversy, using it to dominate media coverage and frame himself as the indispensable leader, willing to take actions others shy away from. Global reactions. Already, Trump's latest statements are reverberating far beyond U.S. borders. European leaders remain cautious, worried that his demands on Russian oil could fracture NATO unity at a time when cohesion is most needed. China has yet to issue a formal response to the tariff threats, but analysts widely expect Beijing to retaliate if such measures ever advance, escalating tensions in global markets. Meanwhile, inside the United States, human rights groups and civil liberties advocates are sounding alarms about the Louisiana National Guard plan. They warn it could set a dangerous precedent for future federal crackdowns, expanding the reach of military authority into civilian life. The bigger picture. What makes the past 24 hours so significant is not just the individual developments themselves, but how they collectively fit into the larger narrative of Trump's political identity. He continues to cast himself as the strongman, a leader unafraid to make bold, controversial decisions that others avoid. For Trump, whether he is right or wrong often matters less than the fact that he is forcing the conversation and pulling the political world into his orbit. To his supporters, this is exactly what they want: an unyielding president who prioritizes American interests above all else. To his critics, it represents a dangerous path, one that risks alienating allies abroad, militarizing domestic politics and deepening divisions at home. Conclusion: the past 24 hours have been a microcosm of Trump's political style. Disruptive, confrontational, and impossible to ignore. From NATO boardrooms in Brussels to the streets of Louisiana, from Beijing's trade offices to a police station in Utah, the ripple effects of his words and decisions are being felt. Whether you view him as a defender of American strength or a destabilizing force, one thing is undeniable: Donald Trump continues to shape the course of history. His actions today carry consequences for tomorrow, economically, politically, and socially. And as the world watches, Trump remains at the center of the storm, steering debates that reach far beyond America's borders. As the past day has shown, Trump is once again driving both the global and domestic conversation with forceful, controversial, and uncompromising actions. Internationally, he is challenging NATO to prove its commitment by cutting off Russian oil, while urging the West to confront China with heavy tariffs. Domestically, he is pressing for National Guard deployment to combat crime in Louisiana and condemning political violence in the wake of Charlie Kirk's tragic murder. The path forward does not lie in blindly accepting or outright rejecting Trump's approach, but in carefully balancing strength with unity, decisive action with responsible governance. America and its allies must work together in a way that secures peace without fracturing trust. At home, domestic policy must confront crime and political violence without undermining freedoms or widening social divides. Ultimately, the best course is one that combines firm leadership with collaboration, bold decisions with accountability, and national security with respect for democratic values. Trump's strategies may set the tone, but the responsibility for America's future lies in finding common ground, where allies abroad, communities at home, and citizens across the political spectrum can move forward together. Only then can the challenges of today be transformed into opportunities for tomorrow.